Hello, YouTube worlds and readers, or people alike who are just clicking on this video. It is a beautiful summer day, and I have a tie on right now because I'm about to go to work. But I thought to myself, I need to review If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin because of how prophetic and entrancing his prose is, especially even in the modern day setting. In terms of the lessons to be taken away from it, both grim and uplifting. So to give a brief synopsis of the plot without giving anything away, there's this main character, Tish, and her family, and Tish has a romance and relationship with a man and has a child. However, this man is falsely accused of rape against a Puerto Rican woman who picked him out of a lineup primarily because he was the only black man in the lineup, consisting of other white men or Hispanic men, and she knew that the man who raped her was black. So from the get-go, there's that systemic racism and injustice that's horrifying to see. Somebody's life is being taken away from him because of a lack of knowledge from the victim presented to her by the justice system itself. So the premise itself is wonderfully crafted and devastating, but the way he writes and exposes the reader to Harlem culture and slang, all while having an extremely page-turning narrative, is its own beauty. I've not read any other James Baldwin pieces, and this is my first one, so I'm excited to, read many more of his work. But a few notes I took down about the book was that I thought it was very interesting that the narrative often centered around her child, her unborn baby, and there's this message about hope, the unborn and not visible hope that you just have to believe in, even though there's no proof of it being there. But along with that hope, there's the despair and the pain that comes with the physical uncomfortability of having a baby and the pain that hope can sometimes bring. There's a quote by Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, who says, "You can never hope without despair, or despair without a hint of hope." And I felt like that was tackled in this book really well. And another interesting but also devastating fact about this book was that it was inspired by Baldwin's real-life friendship with a man named Thomas Manure, who was falsely accused of killing a white Marine and imprisoned for 6 years until he was able to be let go because he was able to prove his innocence. He was just treated as an object in the legal system, 2 minutes for a legal court case to prove your defense, and if not, then you're guilty. And the fact that fiction is being used to derive beauty from that injustice is remarkably hopeful and important in my perspective. And the fact that James Baldwin is able to share a story of his friend into a work of art and make it into a work of art is beautiful. And overall, I enjoyed the aspect of the book that it was a commentary on race and bigotry, while also being a coming-of-age novel for Tish as a character, since she's 19 years old throughout the story and just figuring herself out, along with dealing with racism. She has moments of extreme insight and existential thoughts where she kind of questions herself in the world and the landscape of her days. And in regards to the racial inequity and inequality, just brilliantly crafted metaphors and scenarios are drafted, such as Tish working in a perfume store as a clerk, and Baldwin writes this story as the white customers will simply make her spray the perfume on her hand so that they can smell test it. They expect her to do this as a servant, and it just brings back these feelings of mistreatment and demeaning anecdotes about the way that this injustice is still prevalent in society, but then black customers will spray the perfume on their hands themselves. And how little actions like that in our daily life are seen as, maybe not necessarily taken thought of or brought into the bigger picture of what they may represent, but they are significant. And what does that really mean, that those customers, the white customers, are demanding that and others aren't? Some very interesting scenarios and scenes drafted in that regard. But I just wanted to read one passage to finish it off about the more existential writing that Baldwin describes so well. And he really brings you into a scene without having to feel like it's a burden to read. It feels like a movie. You're surely brought into the scene of sounds and physical layouts and people. So here's one of those scenes. I listened to the music and the sounds from the streets, and Daddy's hand rested lightly on my hair, and everything seemed connected. The street sounds and Ray's voice and his piano and my daddy's hand and my sister's silhouette and the sounds and the lights coming from the kitchen. It was as though we were a picture, trapped in time. This has been happening for hundreds of years. People sitting in a room, waiting for dinner and listening to the blues. And it was as though, out of these elements, this patience, my daddy's touch, the sounds of my mother in the kitchen, the way the light fell, the way the music continued beneath everything, the movement of her hands as she dropped the match into the ashtray, the blurred human voices rising from the street. Out of this rage and a steady, somehow triumphant sorrow, my baby was slowly being formed. Bringing the baby into the description of the atmosphere and layout of the room in a way that words can't do justice to describe. Baldwin is a phenomenal writer, and I look forward to reading more of his work. I would love to read about anybody else who has read any James Baldwin, or if anybody else has read If Beale Street Could Talk. And have a great rest of your day, or year for that matter, if I never see you again. Peace.